Ladies and gentlemen, so happy to have this next guest back on the show. We had him on the first episode of the show with guests 5 years ago today. He is a legend, former UFC welterweight champion, UFC Hall of Famer, respected commentator, and podcaster, and we lost the video on him, but nevertheless, so happy to have on the show the original Croatian sensation, Mr. Pat Miletich. And we're back. Can you hear me, Pat?
Yep, I can hear you. I can hear you perfectly. I just I didn't know if I, sometimes if I turn off the video, at least it'll be better reception for the conversation.
No problem. So. Yeah, no, you're good. And the video is good. If you can keep that, it's excellent. So really appreciate having you back on, man. Yeah, that first show that we had guests, I remember we had you and one of my jiu-jitsu teachers, Fabiano Iha, and it was a great show. And I mean, obviously people like him, and he had a name there, but your name really, I think, got us some really good momentum to be able to keep going. And I know I've told you before, but I want to thank you again. I really appreciate you jumping on with us early.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
So yeah, so much to talk about, Pat, and I don't know where to start, but let's start with the state of MMA today. You were the champion. I think we're coming up right around close to 25 years since you won that belt. Am I right?
It was 24 years a few days ago when I won the 4-man tournament, the inaugural 170-pound tournament.
Nice. So next year will be 25 years. And a lot of people don't know. In fact, I think it's probably a trivia question that will throw people off. If someone says that you were the first welterweight champion, technically you were, but they called it the middleweight title because the only titles they had, the only weight classes were, I think, heavyweight, light heavyweight, and 170, which was middleweight, right?
They actually called it lightweight back then. My belt says lightweight.
Oh, wow. Boy, so I wasn't even, So I knew it wasn't welterweight. I knew they called it something else. Okay, the lightweight champion, you're right. And then it became, while you still had it, did they change it and call it welterweight? I think they did, right?
Yeah. But because when John Peretti came in, John Peretti made a lot of changes and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I did a couple great interviews with him. I'm sorry, what were you saying, Pat? I spoke over you. I didn't know you were talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then Zuffa took over it also, and then so there was definitely a lot of changes that went on while I was there.
Absolutely, and so you definitely had a lot of preparation being there in Iowa. One of the things I was thinking of the other day was, I forget which fighter it was, but someone in that first episode, I think, or second episode that I had you on, I think we had you on 6 months later, asked me to ask you about this is 5 years ago, about the pitchfork incident in Iowa. And I remember you told that story, which had to be a crazy scenario, but you grew up in that rugged fighting area in Iowa. And I think prior to 1993, you had been wrestling. Your first fight in the UFC was 1997, or 97 or 8.
I'm trying to 97 probably, or 98, somewhere in there.
And it's go ahead.
But
and so I'm so sorry.
No, that's problem. I was doing a lot of martial arts, a lot of kickboxing, a lot of Muay Thai training, some judo training. As well before the UFC.
Right. And I remember in an early video interview, I forget where it was, but I remember you mentioned you were studying with Cesar Gracie, I think it was, wasn't it? Or no, Rodrigo Gracie, right?
Rodrigo out in California. I spent some time out there at Ken Gabrielson's gym. So Ken Gabrielson's really technically the first American to get a black belt underneath a Gracie. And he was a fireman out in Orange County, California. So I went out there, slept on the couch in the back room of the gym, stayed there for, 4 or 5 weeks. And Rodrigo Gracie was training there at the time. A guy who I had previously fought from that gym, Earl Lux, was there. John Lober was there. And then they had some bigger guys that were a guy named Chris Rose, who was a Los Angeles police officer. I tell you what, dude, that guy was scary. He was scary on the ground. Very good fun. D1 wrestler as well.
Did he compete in MMA at all, or just trained?
I think he just trained, and I tell you what, I rolled with that guy a little bit. And he was a big guy, but he was so skilled and such a good wrestler that he was a rough cat. He was a rough cat.
Yeah, I believe
those guys. There's some very technical grapplers out there.
Definitely. Well, you were one of the first guys to have a team. Now there's all these teams everywhere. The American Top Team, American Kickboxing Academy, Elevation Fight Team, and you know, all these other tremendous teams. Back in the early days, pretty much it was the Lions Den and Miletich Fighting Systems. I think first.
Yeah,
it was
then there was Shoot Box.
That's right, in Brazil, Shoot the Box. Yeah.
And there was a few other pretty tough teams, but yeah, just less gyms, so to speak, or less teams that were put together that way.
Right, and you were actively fighting and managing people. Like one of the people that I think is kind of doing what you were doing then now is James Krause. Are you familiar with him and Glory MMA over there in St. Louis, I think it is, or Kansas City?
Yeah, I really have enjoyed James's career. I called a few of his fights early on in his career on Access TV, and I still have one of his T-shirts that he walked out in. It says "Stay calm and throw bombs."
Love it. So he's kind of the Pat Miletich of the modern era, an active fighter who is coaching, and he's going everywhere. He's flying everywhere. He's cornering all these guys just like you did. And I gotta figure, man, that has to be tough. I mean, at some point, is that kind of what got you to kind of stop competing, in that you had so much obligations to deal with your other fighters? Or was it a combination of, well, I know you stopped for a while and then came back, but it must have been a big challenge in those early days for you to be fighting and cornering like a dozen guys. You know, what was that like? And did that lead to you having less fights than maybe you would have if you weren't doing that?
Well, I mean, you know, one thing, there were a lot of benefits to it because I never quit training. But the downside of that is that my body took a pretty severe beating, just never resting. You know what I mean?
Training with all those guys, yeah.
Yes, because I had to help them get ready for their fights right when I was done, and I was always in the gym and always getting guys ready. You know, so I was sparring, I was wrestling, I was doing everything. So you know, the pace was a little crazy, but I was also, you know, for me, at the same time, I had, you know, my gym obviously to run. Doing law enforcement and military classes around the country, and then also, you know, started doing the broadcasting and all of that. So I had so much going on at one time that's why I pushed away from the table of coaching, just because I had so much going on that I figured I'd climb the mountain as an athlete and as a coach, and that was what led me. And I had two young girls at the time. I've got three daughters now, but at the time I had two young daughters, and I wasn't seeing them. Even when I was in town, I wasn't seeing them except, you know, for breakfast and take them to school and stuff. And that was it. Yeah. Because I'd get home so late, I'd already be in bed. So, you know, I thought to myself, you know, if I don't get rid of something, I'm just not going to spend any time with my kids. They're not even going to know me.
Yeah. Definitely. No, I think you made the right choice there, and you helped so many fighters. You guys had such a great team there with Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes, yourself, Jeremy Horn, so many guys, obviously, that you could mention. You know, one fight that I remember that I think maybe some of us Generation X guys or millennials that have really looked back at some of the early fights would love to know is that in that fight with Matt Hughes and Carlos Newton, when Matt lifted Carlos up, put him on top of the cage. Carlos had that triangle on Matt, and Matt took him off the cage and slammed him on the ground, and they were both looking like they were out. And then Matt all of a sudden started to get up, and they said, okay, it was like, you know, like Rocky, I think the second Rocky or something like that, and they gave him the victory. Question, was Matt Hughes out and then he came back, or was he never unconscious, do you think?
Well, the deal with that is when Matt slammed him, that was he carried him over. He carried Carlos over to us so he could hear us, and that's something that he always would do during fights.
Gotcha.
And so when he dropped Carlos, I could tell by Matt's eyes that he wasn't all there, and so I jumped up, and my waist, right where your waist bends, I caught at the top of the octagon, and I was able to reach down. He was on his knees, and I did this, scruffed his hair like this, and went, "Get up, get up, get up." And he looked up at me, and then he stood up and he said to Jeremy Horn, he goes, "What just happened?" And Jeremy goes, "You just won the title."
I love it. Oh man, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That was a great fight.
Yeah, I mean, if there was a 10 count, he got up before the 10 count, and Carlos didn't.
Yeah, he did. He did. He had some amazing fights. Hughes really did, and then also he had that terrible train accident. Is he doing okay? Are you in touch with him at all?
He's doing great. He's doing great, and lives down Southern Illinois, and staying busy, and yeah, he's doing real well.
That's cool. Now his brother had like what, 3 or 4 MMA fights?
Yes, he fought, I think, once in the UFC.
And he was a good fighter. Was a good wrestler. And I know a lot of people think if your brother can do it, you can do it. Why not? And these guys were twins. So was there ever a possibility of his brother Mark Hughes sticking with it? And was there any hope, or did any of you guys feel, hey, this guy could be as good as his brother?
He could have been. He just decided not to. He wanted to do other things. He wanted to focus on the farming and stuff like that. He won a fight in the UFC, and on the way back to the locker room, he just looked at me and said, I just don't think this is for me. He goes, I've done it, I've experienced it, but I just don't think this is for me. So
interesting. And if someone ever said that, I'm sure you as a coach and a fighter had no desire to push them or change their mind, huh?
No, I mean, there's no reason. I mean, it's too serious of a sport, to not be 100%, committed mentally and physically and spiritually and everything else. Because I mean, it's a brutal sport. The guys that win fights take a lot of damage too, so.
Without a doubt. So you've done a lot of commentary with Access TV. You've had your amazing show, podcast, Conspiracy Farm, which so many of the conspiracies have turned out to be realities for a lot of people out there.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. What's going on with you nowadays? Do you still have the podcast? Are you still doing any commentary for MMA? What's Pat Miletich up to here in 2022?
I'm going to be calling some fights for Valor, Bare Knuckle. Mm-hmm. That's revving up again here. I also do the Caged Aggression shows here. We started a .com pay-per-view company here. Just kind of threw some guys together that knew what they were doing, and I knew that we had the guys that could, that could make it happen. We had the promoter, we had the guys that were, in the TV industry from this area, and we had the commentary team, all that sort of stuff. So we did that, and we've got another one. They're doing a triple show here at the end of March. People can go to CagedAggression.tv and purchase that pay-per-view, which is much less costly than other pay-per-views, trust me. Definitely. And so people can check that out. And they're great shows, and it's three shows back to back to back on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Very cool. CagedAggression.com, is that where you can find that?
CagedAggression.tv. So, and then I also do we're starting a new podcast. I've got a couple in the can already where, Jeff and I kind of decided to push away from the Conspiracy Farm stuff just because we had told everybody for years, we did that podcast for about 7 years, and we got to the point where, it was over a year out. Yeah, a year out from the spring of 2020 when I said, basically this is going to start in the spring of 2020, just get ready for asymmetrical warfare, and we don't need to go down that path, but people don't even understand that there are many forms of warfare, and asymmetrical is, biological, chemical, financial, psychological, all these different components of it that people just aren't aware of. They just aren't aware of, and it's okay, but it's costly because, as you can see, the inflation that we're being hit with right now. I hate to say it, but it is what it is. And I realized about halfway through his administration that the trillions and trillions of dollars that he was signing into allowing the Federal Reserve to print was going to come back to bite us.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So this delayed reaction. Look, Biden did it too, but Trump did it a couple times at least. And that's why you're seeing the prices. It's not from Russia pushing its way into the Ukraine. That's not why the prices of everything are gone up. They were going up a long time ago.
Without a doubt, and I agree 100%. And not to veer too much. Go ahead.
It's just common sense stuff. Well, I'm sorry. It's just, what's frustrating for me. It's just common sense stuff. This is simple economics 101 stuff, and it's the people that only get their information from their television or just specific influencers or whatever on social media, and they haven't done any research. That's the frustrating thing for me, because again, like I said, people not paying attention and not being informed is what is costing all of us, including my children and everybody else's children.
Yeah, without a doubt, I agree 100%. You've always told it like it is. And one of the things I think you might take some comfort in, or I should say you must take some comfort in, is that it does seem like MMA fighters are embracing the point of view that you have and that I have, pro-America, against these crazy policies that are not helping and that are hurting Americans. And like I'm sure you must have been happy with Bryce Mitchell coming out after that last victory and saying the stuff he did, and it makes me happy, because you would think that people that train so hard and risk their lives and life and limb and their bodies and their health to fight would be people that believe in not chicken shit type of policies that are only going to hurt their neighbors and their family. And it's got to be a comfort to you that for the most part, MMA fighters are really realizing a lot of this stuff that's going on and are speaking out against it.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's all we can do right now. It's peaceful non-compliance, basically, is what it has to be. But no, Bryce Mitchell's a well-spoken young man. He's an amazing fighter, and with him, I feel the same way. It is. We have no business going into another foreign war. We have no business doing that.
Right.
It is, and again, so many people that are uninformed about, there was when we covered it on my podcast, when we first started our podcast, we were talking about it, that neo-Nazis had overthrown the Ukrainian government and put a couple characters, Newland, Assistant Secretary of State under Hillary Clinton, Newland was, I believe her first name is Victoria Newland. But anyway, she was caught on tape talking to a representative of, I think, the Council of Foreign Relations, discussing on who they were going to put in as the next president after these neo-Nazis were done taking down the government.
Right.
So
it's
don't expect Putin to. This is happening on his border. If that was happening in Mexico,
right,
and Russia was funding a takeover of the Mexican government and then sending in all kinds of military equipment and stuff like that,
then we should be involved.
What do people think? What do people expect out of someone who's a leader of a nation like that? Right.
Yeah.
And I don't support it.
No.
I don't. I mean, Putin has proven time and time again he's not a good human being.
Correct.
But do I want to provoke a villain with some more villains and cause a global war?
No, definitely not. No, and the elite don't care, but if they're willing to sacrifice the average everyday person, and then clearly with the gas prices the way they are and inflation and people hardly being able to afford driving and eating, it's not an administration looking out for the American people, that's for sure. And I think just to wrap it up really quick, then I want to ask you a couple more fight questions
Yeah.
I think when we finally get these maniacs out of office in the next few years, I would hope and think that you would be someone that would be elevated as an inspiration, and a hero, instead of being somewhat vilified as you have been. So I look forward to those times, because I think that will be the case, and I think you'll be on the forefront of people that have the courage to tell it like it is. I know I feel that way about you.
Well, and what I'm focused on is helping people, and that's what I've always tried to do. And one of the other things that I'm doing is I've been given the exclusive U.S. rights on what I consider to be the most powerful fulvicumic acid soil conditioner on the planet. So
wow.
this can be used on farm crops. We've got a shortage coming of conventional fertilizers. Russia's our biggest importer of that, and the prices have exploded up to 300% more expensive. So farmers are spending up to $250 to $300 an acre to fertilize their property. Now, you times that by 1,000 acres.
Wow.
Of $300. You're talking massive amounts of money for these guys. Now you go up to the farms that are 10,000 acres and bigger, right? So the costs are going to be crippling for a lot of these family farms, and so this can be used in conjunction with less conventional fertilizers, because it improves the uptake of the nutrients, and it also is soil reclamation. These are the nutrients that were in our soil 100 years ago or more, but because we've done mass farming, we've sucked all those organic nutrients out of the soil through years of that industrial level farming. So this is important. This is important for the soil as well, because it helps oxygenate it, it enriches it again, and causes the plants to have deeper root systems, so there's less water needed. There's just so many benefits to this, and for feed grain, for hogs, for cattle, stuff like that, it's going to have some serious nutrients in it.
Interesting.
Because we are considerably less expensive than conventional. So, this is something that farmers here in Iowa are starting to pick up on, and they're coming to us, and we're spreading the word. I've been talking to people, all over the nation about the hydroponic stuff, the CBD, the marijuana, the corn, the beans,
yep.
All kinds of different stuff that can be. And this is super important, because when you have sick soil, you have sick people.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Is there any specific website you can tell us real quick where we could find this product, or has it not been? Have you not come out with anything yet?
People can email Soil Saviors LLC at yahoo.com.
Okay. Soil Saviors LLC.
Soil Saviors LLC at yahoo.com. And we're doing the larger farms, obviously, right now. I mean, still family farms, but it's not for gardening.
Gotcha.
It doesn't come in those small containers. It comes in 55-pound bags.
Gotcha. Very, very interesting. I like that. Definitely like to find out more about that. For sure, it sounds like something that's very important. Wanted to ask you, in the last few minutes we have together, though, about a big fight coming up with our next guest, Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev. You're an Iowa wrestler, and an Iowa wrestler that took your wrestling to the highest levels in the UFC. So you know about wrestling, and you know about wrestling for MMA better than most people out there. This is such an interesting matchup, in that you've got a Brazilian who's worked on his wrestling and has actually improved it pretty substantially from years ago. He's a high-level jiu-jitsu black belt, and he's got some hands, battle tested against the best guys out there, going up against a guy who's definitely taller, younger, and possibly stronger, but has not beaten anyone ranked higher than maybe number 20. So there's a little bit of a question mark after his name. But what do you think? How do you think this fight plays out? Khamzat Chimaev against Gilbert Burns. I'm not going to ask you for any prediction if you don't have one. You're probably possibly on the fence, I think, on this. But if you want to throw out a prediction, you could. Otherwise, give me a couple of things that maybe the public should look for to be able to give us an idea on what's going on, maybe from a real expert's standpoint, and then maybe a couple of different ways that you think this fight could play out.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, when I look at the athletes and their games, Gilbert is smaller. I don't necessarily. He's very, very good. He's very good, but I think I don't know if he's in between that real rough weight where he can't make 55, but a little too small for 170 because these guys are, coming down from. I mean, I was cutting down from probably 195 at the time, so I was cutting 25 pounds, and there's guys bigger than that.
Yep.
There were guys bigger than that when I was fighting. So, Chimaev is a big guy, very rangy, very strong guy, very solid wrestling, and he's got good striking. He's got fast hands as well. But Gilbert's got the speed advantage. He's got to use his feet. I mean, he's got to use a lot of movement and just control the center of the cage. You can't get stuck up against the cage against Chimaev. You just can't do it. He's going to put you on your ass. So that's really what Gilbert has to do. Chimaev is a guy that he's going to stalk until he can get his paws on Gilbert. Gilbert's just got to figure out a way to not end up getting taken down. And if he does, I'm sure he's working quite a bit on getting back up. But we've seen a lot of people have trouble doing that against Chimaev.
Absolutely. It's definitely going to be a test. This test is going to tell us how good Chimaev is. And, it's interesting. Like they say, there are levels to this game. I like when fighters mention that because a lot of times that comes true. And if Gilbert is able to turn away this challenge, then we would be able to say Chimaev was just not quite on that level yet. But then he very well might be. Seems like a super confident fighter at 6'2". And coming down to 170, like you said, it's got to be hell of a cut. The guy's got to walk around probably over 200. He also fights at 185. Obviously, he has more advantages at 170, but you'd think as time goes by, it's going to be harder and harder for him to make it. But looks like he can do it for now, huh?
Chimaev, I mean, he's that's the thing, man. I'm telling you, I've wrestled Russians and I fought Russians. They grow up different than we do, man. I mean, I had a rough childhood, no doubt, but I didn't have dirt floors and live in the mountains.
Right. Yeah.
So they've lived a totally different level of life in terms of toughness. And, those guys walk around barefoot in snow. They don't care. So, they're just very, very tough, rugged people. And, you've got to have, if you notice, when you look at the champions in the UFC, generally, you see immigrant mentality, not just immigrants, but immigrant mentality. Even though like a Stipe Miocic, grew up here in America, but those to be, to help people understand, like Croatians and Croatian Americans are very proud of their blood because it's a tough breed of people. And so I always had that immigrant mentality, work 3 jobs all the time, just have that mentality of work. And that's the mentality you've got to have. You cannot be soft in any way, shape, or form and expect to win a UFC championship. It's just not going to happen.
That's for sure. Pat, we got Gilbert scheduled to come on in about 1 minute, but I really appreciate you coming on. So much more to talk to you about. Maybe we can see if you're free over the next few weeks. I wanted to bounce something else off you as well that my producer, Dr. Adam Rorta, had in mind. So I'll give you a ring on that. But man, I want to thank you so much for jumping on 5 years after you first came on. Huge respect for you, man, in every way. And I want to thank you so much for jumping back here with us on the MMA Power Hour 5-year anniversary.
All right, man. Thank you, guys. Take care.
You too. Have a great night.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please help me out and like this video, then click the subscribe and get notifications buttons so you don't miss any of my latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Follow us on Facebook at The Hannibal TV for more live streams and videos. And while you're at it, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Hannibal TV.